In 2014, Kirk Cameron, actor, evangelist, and someone with way too much time on his hands, created and starred in Kirk Cameron Saves Christmas, an infamously abysmal film that tries to offer a Christian interpretation of some of the holiday's more secular traditions. Though while the film has received heavy criticism for its lackluster acting, weird editing, and bizarrely mutable dialogue, little if anything has been said about the historical elements of the film. But since I love talking about the traditions and history of Christmas, and I have no other video ideas, I thought this would be a fun way to ring in the holiday season. Maybe I should have just made Christmas cookies. For those of you who've never seen this absolute train wreck of a film, the premise is that Kirk Cameron, in an attempt to convince his brother-in-law, Christian, of the religious significance of Christmas, tries to recast several of the holiday's secular traditions as authentically Christian, completely ignoring many important aspects of the holiday's history along the way. For instance, when Christian raises concerns about the holiday's commercialism and how society's obsession with presents and Christmas parties has overshadowed the true purpose of Christmas, i.e. celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, Kirk launches into a speech about the Nativity where he explains that Jesus survived King Herod's murder of the innocents so that he could grow up and sacrifice himself for the sins of mankind, which, while a nice sentiment, has absolutely nothing to do with the issue Christian was talking about. While people often complain that commercialism has corrupted the sanctity of Christmas, in reality, commercialism is an important part of the holiday, and has been so for well over a century, especially in the United States, where it's been argued that commercialism may have helped boost the holiday's popularity, as advertisements featuring the more secular elements of Christmas could be used to reach a broader audience and generate more profit. Christmas window displays, Christmas cards, visits with Santa, and even Rudolph are all traditions that were born out of commercialism. Not to mention the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, the event that signals the start of the Christmas shopping season, which has been going strong for almost a century. This isn't to say that the religious aspects of Christmas are insignificant, but if you took away all the commercial elements of the holiday, it would probably look pretty different. Still unconvinced, Christian next takes issue with the holiday's pagan origins, specifically regarding its close proximity to the winter solstice and Christmas trees, which according to him are derived from a pagan fertility ritual. Though Kirk assures him that the holiday's proximity to the winter solstice is simply a coincidence, and that Christmas trees aren't pagan because there are trees in the Bible, not Christmas trees, just trees, it's very likely that there is a link between Christmas and paganism. For instance, because the Bible never specifies exactly when Jesus was born, the day of his birth became a topic of debate within the early church. That is, until 336 AD, when the local church at Rome declared December 25th to be the National Day of Christ. Though the document that states this, the chronograph of 354, doesn't specify exactly why December 25th was chosen, it's been suggested that the date was selected to coincide with the festival of Saturnalia, a celebration honoring the Roman god Saturn, that traditionally ran from December 17th to the 23rd. As creating a Christian alternative to the holiday would dissuade converts from participating in paganism, though it would seem that the church's efforts were in vain, as the traditions and rituals of Saturnalia seem to have persisted until well after Christmas was established. Saturnalia may have also impacted medieval Christmas traditions like the Feast of Fools, a rather unruly celebration that incorporated several popular Saturnalia pastimes like excessive drinking, feasting, and role reversal. Though rather than masters serving their slaves, in the medieval tradition, children were appointed as boy bishops and allowed to take on adult responsibilities from December 6th to the 28th. Though this tradition of misrule began in France during the 12th century, the celebration soon spread as variants of the tradition began popping up across Europe. So, far from a time of prayer and pious devotion, Christmas time throughout most of medieval Europe was 12 days of partying, gambling, and drunken revelry that offered people a well-needed escape from the cold and dreary days of winter. However, the riotous traditions of Christmas rubbed many in the church the wrong way, and would eventually lead to the holiday being banned during the 17th century, though more on that later. When it comes to Christmas trees, though it's true that evergreen plants were used as decorations during Saturnalia, decorated trees were not part of the festivities. While the origin of Christmas trees is a bit unclear, it's believed that the practice may be connected to medieval paradise plays, a tradition where segments from the Book of Genesis would be performed each Christmas Eve, with a small evergreen tree, often decorated with apples, being used to represent the Garden of Eden. Though these plays eventually fell out of fashion, many German-speaking countries continue to erect paradise trees in public spaces, with the first record of an indoor tree occurring in Strasbourg in 1605. The only evergreen that may be connected with fertility is mistletoe, which, according to Pliny the Elder, was once worshipped by Druids for its ability to render any barren animal fertile. But while it's possible that this ancient belief could have impacted the modern tradition of kissing under the mistletoe, this seems fairly unlikely, considering that this practice wasn't documented until the 19th century. To give the audience a break from the non-stop action of two people talking in a car, the film shifts focus to Christians' co-workers talking about the War on Christmas, a term that is sometimes used by Christians who believe they're fighting a war against the liberal secularization of Christmas, when in reality they're just upset that society is acknowledging that people other than Christians exist by encouraging the use of holiday-neutral terms like Happy Holidays and Season's Greetings, which are actually both traditional Christmas phrases that have been in use since the 19th century. Sorry, that turned into kind of a rant. Ironically, while Christmas has been banned several times throughout history for various reasons, the only significant bans in Western society were instigated by Christians who took issue with the holiday's lack of biblical representation, and also communists. But I'll talk about that later. During the 16th century, a religious movement emerged in England that called for the purification of the church and an end to practices it deemed unchristian. These Puritans, as they came to be known, understandably took issue with Christmas, as, in addition to opposing the season's more sordid traditions like drinking and gambling, they believed that there was no religious basis to celebrate the holiday, being that Christmas is never mentioned in the Bible. Unfortunately, in 1647, the Puritans' problem with Christmas spread to the rest of England, when the government, which was technically led by Oliver Cromwell, passed an ordinance banning all Easter and Christmas celebrations. Though this ban was relatively short-lived, lasting just 13 years until the re-establishment of the monarchy with Charles II in 1660, England was not the only country to ban Christmas, as Scotland also banned the holiday in 1640. For basically the same reasons. A decision which technically wasn't reversed until 1958, when December 25th became a public holiday. This isn't to say that people stopped celebrating, however. Instead, many aspects of the traditional Scottish Christmas celebration were transferred to New Year's. While in England, many people defy the law and continue to celebrate in secret, proving that people will always find a reason to party. The last significant Christmas ban in the West was issued by the Soviet Union, who, unlike the Puritans, took issue with the religious elements of the holiday, as they considered religion to be a tool used by the bourgeoisie to control the working class. Though the holiday was banned in 1928, 7 years later, in an attempt to gain some good publicity, Stalin's government brought back many Christmas traditions, which they incorporated into the secular New Year celebration. It's almost like modern Christmas celebrations are actually a mix of secular and religious traditions, giving people the option to choose how and why they want to celebrate. Right, Kirk? Christian's final complaint is about Santa Claus, who he argues has essentially kicked Jesus out of his own birthday party. Hey, baby Jesus had his turn delivering presents. He just wasn't very marketable. But to reassure him of the religious significance of Santa Claus, Kirk relates the story of St. Nicholas at the Council of Nicaea. According to legend, while attending the Council of Nicaea, a meeting of bishops called by Emperor Constantine in 325 AD to discuss issues relating to Christian theology, St. Nicholas struck a priest named Arius who claimed that Jesus, as the Son of God born to a human woman, was not eternal and thus less holy than God. While the story was clearly intended to reframe the largely secular Santa Claus as a kind of Christian action hero, it's likely that this event never actually happened. While historians are pretty sure that there was a man named Nicholas who served as bishop in the port city of Myra during the 4th century, there's no historical documentation about him from this period, and any writing by him has been lost to time, if it ever existed in the first place, meaning that our entire body of knowledge about him is derived from legends and stories, most of which were written centuries after he died. One thing we can assume with some certainty, however, is that St. Nicholas probably didn't have much in common with modern Santa Claus, as many of the figure's most recognizable characteristics developed after his death. His devotion and generosity towards children, that likely comes from an 8th century legend about St. Nicholas giving bags of gold to a father who couldn't afford to pay his daughter's dowry. His iconic red suit, well, that was likely an invention of political cartoonist Thomas Nast, though Coca-Cola's ad campaign in the 1930s is probably what made the look so popular. His sleigh and 8 reindeer, well, they were first featured in a magazine illustration in 1821, though they didn't receive their names until Clement Clarke Moore wrote A Visit from St. Nicholas in 1823. Now, this isn't to say that St. Nicholas wasn't a warrior for Christ with a heart of gold and a sack full of toys, but there's just no way of knowing. Kirk Cameron Saves Christmas is an absolute head trip of a film that tries and fails to attach religious significance to a bunch of secular Christmas traditions in an attempt to justify the Christian obsession with the holiday, which is honestly just ridiculous. Christmas has changed so much since it was first established in the 4th century, because that's what traditions do. They grow and adapt, or they fall into obscurity. But just because Christmas has become largely secular doesn't mean that Christians need to justify their reason for celebrating. Instead, just focus on celebrating for the reasons that are important to you, whether that's honoring Jesus' birth or having fun with family and friends. Well, as always, I'm Silver Jade, wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Because this video was such a headache, I think I'm going to be taking a well-deserved break.